Why, hello there, I'm Professor Joel, and welcome to another episode of Planet Scooby Reviews. Today we are covering The Tar Monster, which is episode 5 of the third season of Scooby-Doo Where Are You? And it originally aired on October 7th, 1978. It sees the gang in Turkey. They're in the Mystery Machine, and they go to a buried village where they are summoned by a professor. And that's where the Tar Monster lives. I don't have much trivia to speak of this episode, as the title pretty much sums it up. And the episode is fairly straightforward, so enough of my jibber jabber, let's get to the review. The episode begins with the Mystery Machine driving up a Turkish mountain road. The gang are headed towards Professor Brixton's camp, where he has discovered a city that has been buried for thousands of years.
Just hang on, gang. We should be at Professor Brixton's camp any minute now.
As the gang head into a village, the tar monster emerges from a pond of tar and growls in dissatisfaction as the Mystery Machine drives down the road. The village is restricted, and the gang are approached by two guards who let them in as Freddy explains the circumstances.
This area is restricted, no visitors.
But we've come at the direct invitation of Dr. Brixton, sir.
His tent is over there.
In Professor Brixton's tent, the professor explains that they've had to stop digging as all his workers have been frightened away by the tar monster. According to a local legend, the tar pools in the area are under protection from the tar monster, and since he has surfaced, nobody wants to be around.
We're anxious to see what you've discovered in the ancient city.
There won't be much to see. We've had to stop digging because all my workers were frightened away by the tar monster. This area has been known for centuries for its tar pools. The people have always believed the ancient city of Byzantius was under the protection of a legendary creature that lived in the pools, the tar monster. The trouble began yesterday, when we finally reached the inner sanctum of the ancient city.
All of this happened yesterday when they reached the inner sanctum of the city, where they came across a written curse that read, "This city is under protection of the tar creature. Intruders beware."
We were about to open this sanctum, and we found an ancient curse carved in the stone. It said, "This city is under protection of the tar creature. Intruders, beware." And then he appeared, the tar monster.
To make matters worse, Mr. Stoner, the professor's assistant, was kidnapped and his tent destroyed and covered with tar.
Zoinks! Like what happened?
Hey, what happened?
Last night I heard my assistant, Mr. Stoner,
All right.
shouting for help. I ran over here to help and found this, his tent, destroyed. Here's a picture of Stoner, streaked with tar.
There's tar everywhere.
As priceless treasures sit in the inner sanctum, the professor is determined to forge ahead. The gang are taken to their tents by Benghazi, who is the team foreman.
A priceless treasure awaits us in the inner sanctum. It's only my foreman, Benghazi.
And during the night, Scooby and Shaggy encounter the tar monster in their tent. Running out, they explain to the rest of the gang that they've seen this legendary creature. The gang follow the tar monster tracks and come to a tar pool, as if the tar monster went down it.
Jinkies, the tracks end at this tar pool.
Don't know, but I bet the professor will.
Freddy also finds an ancient piece of pottery. Back at the worksite, the professor and foreman have decided to open up the inner sanctum. The professor goes off to get his equipment, and the gang head down to the excavation site.
I will go with you and your friends to open the inner sanctum today.
You can witness what will surely be one of the most valuable finds of the century.
I'm Geraldo Rivera, and you're about to witness a live television event. A massive concrete vault has been discovered. Some think it belonged to none other than the notorious Al Capone. Well, tonight, for the first time, that vault is going to be open live.
Down below in the underground city, the gang walk through and see many statues strewn about. Velma asks what happened to the city of Byzantius.
Professor, what happened to the mighty city of Byzantius?
Hey, what happened?
And the professor explains that there was a giant earthquake that brought the surrounding hills collapsing down on the city.
Our research indicates there was a giant earthquake that dropped this entire region hundreds of feet.
Jeepers!
And then the surrounding hills collapsed, burying the city forever.
Using a crowbar, the professor opens up the inner sanctum doors, and inside the treasures are gone.
Professor, the treasures have been stolen.
We also find a statue of the tar monster that has been left to guard the inner sanctum treasures.
Look, the tar monster.
Game over, man. It's game over.
Relax. It's only a statue.
The gang also find tar monster footprints, which is impossible as the guards were guarding the room the entire time. Velma suspects he got in an alternative way. The lost city is full of multiple corridors, and they all seem to have tar tracks going down them. So the gang split up so they can all cover more ground.
Looks like our tar monster has been here several times. There are tracks down both corridors.
Of course, Freddy, Daphne, and Velma go in one direction, and our trio find a workman's toolbox that has a map of the underground city, and it is streaked with tar.
It's a map of the underground city streaked with tar. And there's the inner sanctum.
Freddy and the girls also find the tar tracks that bring them to a tar pool, while Shaggy and Scooby's tar tracks bring them right into the tar monster's dripping arms. A fast makeup job where our duo pose as statues allows them a quick escape. The gang reunite and they discover an air compressor. Velma and Freddy have figured out what's going on, and Freddy uses the air compressor to set a trap. Using the compressor to pump air into the tar pits, the tar forces the tar monster out where he is caught on a tree branch. Unmasking the tar monster, it's Stoner, the missing assistant. Stoner's plan was to scare everyone away so he could steal the relics. He was able to sneak past the guards by using his costume, which had scuba gear hidden inside. He used the scuba gear to dive through the pools.
Now let's see who the tar monster really is.
Why, it's Stoner, my missing assistant.
He posed as the tar monster to frighten off the local workers.
That way, he could sneak into the inner sanctum and steal its treasures before you could find them.
Like he used his scuba gear to dive down through the tar.
Stoner, where have you taken the treasures?
I'll never tell.
Velma then uses the map they found earlier to find the stolen treasures, where we see mountains of gold and jewels. With another mystery solved, the gang head off on their next adventure. I give this episode an 8 out of 10. I was originally thinking 7.5, but after my 5 or 6 time watching this episode in a week, I enjoyed it a little bit more. Strong points for me is the tar monster himself. The design is really cool. It's a very memorable villain in terms of design, but in terms of plot, this episode is a bit forgettable. I think when I do my final review, I won't remember much of this, and I think that's because there's just too many gags in this episode. It's a lot of Scooby and Shaggy reacting and being silly, which I like, but I also like spookiness, and I also like just scenes of kids being kids. What I liked in the earlier episodes of Scooby-Doo was always the kids just acting like kids and going to the malt shop, which of course they can't do here because they're in Turkey. But even like in a Frightened Hound Meets Demons Underground, which took place in Seattle, they go to the Space Needle in Seattle to that revolving restaurant. And that was really cool. And I wish this episode had more of that. Although we do get a pretty cool scene early on when they're driving in the Mystery Machine and all. And the whole atmosphere of the maze underground where the gang could get lost. And if they didn't have a light, they might fall in a tar pit or something. And that would be the death of them, right? So that was kind of spooky. And the tar monster himself is very memorable. He actually shows up in a lot of Scooby-Doo media later on, such as the 100 Nights of Fright video game and Scooby-Doo and the Cyber Chase episode movie thing, and Scooby-Doo 2 Monsters Unleashed. We see that the tar monster show up. So a lot of people do like the tar monster and the design of him, but all he really does is kind of growl. There's not much personality to him. What's cool, it's this guy in the scuba suit. I don't know how well that would work in a tar pit. I think, I don't know. I'd imagine a tar pit would be hard to swim through, but cartoon logic, who cares? Anyway, still a good episode, and I enjoyed it. This one's actually a lot of people's favorites from what I've been talking to with some people, so I can see why. For me, I just wish it was a little less Scooby and Shaggy gags and a little more kind of kids being kids and a little more time for Freddy, Daphne, and Velma on screen to put their part forward for me. Anyway, that wraps up my review. I want to thank everyone for their likes, subscribes, and views. Every week I gain a little more views and subscribers, so I must be doing something right? So join me next week when I will be covering a Highland fling with a monstrous thing. Until then, stay spooky.
Look, the tar monster.